Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for attending to hear about something that is near and dear to my heart, the topic of lineage. I've been with Manta now for a little over 2 years after many years in the governance and metadata management, lineage, and data integration business. And here at Manta, we're focused on data lineage. And I'm excited to talk to you here today about implementing data lineage specifically for governance and regulatory compliance. Let's take a quick look at our agenda. I know we only have a short period of time together, but very quickly I'd like to introduce the definition of data lineage. It's a well understood kind of outline of what lineage is, but it helps to kind of level set all of us in this session. Talk specifically about some data lineage use cases, and then quickly do an overview of Manta. But let's talk about data lineage to start. What is data lineage? And it's the ability to track or report on and trace how data flows through your enterprise. We'll get into the use cases shortly to talk about why it's important to do lineage. But the definition of lineage is to understand, where does data come from? Where does it flow to? And what happens to it along the way? How is it manipulated? How is it transformed, as many people like to use a word, where the data is actually changed or munged, edited? Calculations, like mathematical calculations, are transformations. So what is actually happening to it? Data gets shifted, data gets filtered, data gets changed in its structure, and all of these things are critical if you're trying to get better insights into your assets and how they affect all the pipelines in your organization. Well, why is lineage hard to achieve? Well, there's many reasons. One of them is certainly the business versus technical view that's desired. Many users might just want to see a high level, and that might be the business users that would want to see information, how it flows from one application to another, or from particular geographies. Maybe it flows from a division in one particular continental geography to another. Right? It could be that it comes from a data lake, and it's a corporate data lake, and it flows into a risk system. Or, as we're going to talk about in a little bit, it comes from one sub company or merger and acquisition to another, and it still lives in those original silos. But the level of detail is also very important, because business users might want to see it at that high level, and technical users, who might be another segment, that they want to see it really deep down. And sometimes that can cause vocabulary conflicts. And some people are completely overwhelmed when they see individual databases and schemas and what is SQL syntax. And yet technical people do want to see all of that so they can understand what's actually in the code, because they may understand it, but they aren't the ones that wrote it, because it very often is legacy code that's been around for a long time. Being able to understand the scope is also important, makes it really difficult, and because code changes so often. And being able to take a look at whether or not I want to see the individual SQL statements coming from a database application that we wrote in the year 2000, or each individual process within ETL jobs that perhaps are now up on the cloud, is different than seeing it at that high level, like we talked about before, where I just want to see the data lake and how it flows into, say, risk reporting. And all of these things become challenges because of the technologies. And the company evolution is also critical. Large organizations that have legacy applications from 2000 or even before then, moving towards the cloud, have done mergers and acquisitions where they have different people, different skill sets, people move on, people get promoted. No one's documented things the way we always wish that they would document them. And so now we've got code that's scattered all around, some of it that's still working in production, and there's no one that's actually coding in it anymore, but no one wants to touch those production processes. We certainly don't want to have to open them up in order to figure out how data is flowing. But having solutions that can actually read through that code and parse it and figure it out can be very helpful. Let's take a look at some of the use cases of why we want to go through and come up with Lineage. Two of these are kind of related to code and IT, data ops and cloud migrations, which we're seeing quite a bit right now. Data ops is really all the work that goes into making sure that your data pipelines are reliable and robust and that they remain up and running so that your executives don't go to look at reports on a Monday morning and the reports are blank. They didn't get any data. Or that we don't actually break something so an architect or a DBA can look at Lineage and try to define, if we're going to change this particular algorithm, let's make sure it doesn't bust something downstream and prevent in advance from having that executive decision maker not having anything show up on Monday morning. Cloud migrations are about trying to get an inventory. If we have a legacy application like I've been speaking to, and it doesn't have to be as old as 2000, but many of us are moving applications into the cloud, and we need to understand them before we go and lift everything to move it. It might be that many of those reports and parts of the application have been deprecated. Or maybe we identify that out of 76 reports, there's only 4 that people really use anymore. Well, let's do a lineage on that so we can see which aspects of that application we really care about. And for data quality, it's often about trying to actually see how do data quality problems pop up within the Lineage infrastructure. What we really want to focus here on is governance and regulatory compliance. So let's dive deeper into specific aspects of this use case that is driving the need for Lineage. Compliance is pitting all companies with this challenge to face government regulators or industry regulators, or with privacy information now, even with any industry, trying to respond to regulatory issues that are going to be checked, to understand exactly how privacy data is flowing through the organization, to know where it flows, so that if someone asks to be forgotten, you'll know exactly where to look in what databases that actually plays out. To look for potential breaches and where data is being sent to because it was being thrown into audit files that were created a long time ago, maybe debugging files. And we're splashing it in different places and we don't understand where all those places are. Becomes extremely important because we don't want the company to get a bad reputation or show up in the headlines because they caused a breach that they should have known about. Governance and compliance becomes very important with the time it takes for Lineage. Everybody does Lineage, but how do they do it now? They typically are doing it in a manual fashion. And we can't meet those regulators' deadlines fast enough. Even if we are doing everything correctly, we can't prove it. So that's important. Many sites are bringing Lineage into governance solutions that are doing things like providing glossaries and common understanding, that are providing for stewardship. But governance is typically a three-legged stool. It requires that you understand your data and it's defined correctly, understand lay out what the data quality is so it can be checked, that it's accurately profiled, and lineage. And good governance requires that three-legged stool to be solid. So if you don't have lineage, the governance solution can't easily stand on its own. I mentioned data quality earlier, but let's talk about it within the context of governance. A lot of governance is about trust, and that's my next bullet. But trusting data means really having confidence that it's being handled correctly and that it's reliable when I look at it within my data science models, or when I look at it just within my standard reports. And if I can identify data quality issues within the context of a lineage pipeline, I can help prioritize them. Everybody probably has data quality issues. We know that. But if I have a data quality issue that I can see in a data lineage result and diagram, that is affecting a report that goes over to my VPs of revenue so they can make sales decisions or resourcing decisions, that's probably a bigger data quality problem than one that shows up in the pipeline affecting perhaps parking passes in a human resources application. Now, not to say that that's a bad thing, but if I was looking at data quality issues that I have and they're all flagged within the context of Lineage, I'll have a better chance of being able to prioritize which ones I should fix first. Having trust in that pipeline is one of the biggest goals for governance and compliance. And when I'm looking at a report, a spreadsheet, and I see something in the red and I don't agree with it, I want to be able to challenge it. Who do I talk to? Where did the data come from? How recently was it updated? Data Lineage provides those answers critical to the governance message. We want to more accurately define the scope of governance initiatives. Too often we see sites that want to govern everything, and so they bite off more than they can chew and try to do the whole ocean. Right? By doing Lineage, we can go to the teams that are most badly need governance. Maybe it's the risk department that's under the most pressure. Find their reports and then use Lineage to determine at least where we start to have an initial success with governance, instead of trying to just grab everything and, oh, gee, let's start governing our logical and physical models, and let's start with, I don't know, whatever database we can get our hands on, let's start there. No, let's think about which groups in the company, kind of like drawing a horizontal line across the organization, but a narrow one, so we can identify who we should start with, and then perform Lineage to lay out what resources should we do business terms for, what resources should we apply stewardship for, so we get an early success on the entire governance project. And I mentioned this a little bit before when we talk about things like CCPA in California and GDPR overall in the world, and some of the other states that are starting to pop up with privacy regulations. Lineage, especially if I go downstream. We've been talking a lot about upstream Lineage for trust. Hey, I'm looking at this report. Where does it come from? But on the other hand, I can look at my sources of information and then say, let's see Lineage that goes downstream. And all of a sudden, all these little places where over the years, little audits were created, there was a customer file that gets placed out on some other remote drive for one of our departments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the hidden nightmares, potentially, when we talk about exposing privacy data. Okay, here at Manta, what do? Well, we help our customers by providing end-to-end Lineage. When we say end-to-end, it means being able to go back and look at your mainframe sources, the tooling that might be carving that before it puts it into an operational system or a data warehouse. Perhaps then certain aspects of it were pulled over the years into places like Hadoop, and it's been studied there, and before it goes off to the cloud into a database like Snowflake or something like that, where it can be reported on. End to end, being able to see all of that visually is critical. So Manta looks at code. We crunch your custom SQL, your ETL, your business intelligence reports, and we document the lineage along the way. And we visualize that lineage with an interactive map. As you can see here, it's highly color-coded, and allowing you to actually see how that data is flowing as you click through it. And in fact, in a simplistic description of this screenshot, the user clicked on that yellow national ID, and everything that's in one direction going downstream is in red. Everything that would be upstream, it happens to be in blue. But it's all color-coded to make it very easy to see, and it's always providing at the detailed column level. And alternatively, where people have third-party governance tools, we will push the lineage into that solution to create that three-legged stool that I was talking about earlier, where lineage is such a critical component. I know that was a quick rush and definition of lineage. I'm sorry we didn't have more time, but thank you very much. Well, I can look to see what other questions have come up during this session.
Oh, thank you, Ernie. That was a great presentation. I have, when you start thinking about the journeys that data go on, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how often they move around and are touched and uploaded and downloaded, and trying to manage all of that is just mind-boggling. So data lineage for sure is needed.
Absolutely.
So I want to remind the audience, you can submit questions by typing them into the questions tab located at the top of your screen. But we've had some questions that have come in while you were presenting. And so here's one I'd like to ask. It says, why did you choose to implement a knowledge graph for data lineage? And specifically, why Neo4j?
Wonderful question. Lineage is just chock full of relationships. Relationships between databases and programs that pick up the data and flow it through multiple components within a program and then finally write it out to another location. And then that information is picked up by a reporting tool. So there's an asset that has to be established with a relationship that says, oh, this reporting tool pulls the data from this database and it's going to write it to this other location, or deliver it to a particular report. So there's such a huge number of interrelationships that go on that it was very clear early in our architecture, quite a few years ago, that we decided a graph database was just absolutely required to provide the best ability to represent all of these complex relationships and do it as efficiently as possible. We also realized early on that the kind of relationships that our biggest customers have with mergers and acquisitions like we talked about and a myriad of technologies, we're not going to have tens of thousands or tens of millions of relationships. They're approaching hundreds of millions of relationships. And we found that we absolutely had to have the leader in this marketplace, Neo4j, in order to provide not just the scalability and to our customers in terms of being able to ingest all these relationships and report on them, but also the maturity and robustness of that environment. And we felt that not only was it going to be the best for our customers, it was also the best for our own purposes internally in being able to produce the most reliable software as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you. So here's another one. How do you acquire code for lineage analysis? And can you capture detailed expressions from SQL scripts?
Another great question. So what Manta does, as much as possible, is tries to connect the actual real source. So generally, whether it's through JDBC or other connectivity APIs, we will connect directly to that system, whether it's an ETL tool or whether it's a database, and read the information directly from its catalog. All of that, what's called metadata, is the stored procedures and the views and the tables and columns. And we pull out those stored procedures or scripts to examine them. Now, sometimes we can't get access to the catalog, or the scripts are completely external. So someone just has lots and lots of code that's sitting somewhere, or they've extracted it from their favorite ETL tool. So in those cases, we just put it on disk into a place where Manta can access it, and we'll read it right from disk to perform that examination. Now, this is all code. Manta doesn't look at the data. We're only looking at the code, and whether we read it directly from the catalog or bring it from disk, we then start our analysis at that point. Great question.
Great, thank you, and a great answer. So I know we're running a little short on time, but I want to get this last question in and also remind the audience, if your question wasn't answered, someone from Neo4j will reach out to you directly, or you can send an email to webinar@neo4j.com and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. But here's this last question. How does Manta support Lineage for in-house non-commercial applications?
Another fantastic question. We go through the marketplace. We listen to our customers, and that's how we decide whether we're going to do what we call a scanner for a popular database. You know, the major RDBMSs in the market, or the major ETL tools, or the major reporting tools. But oftentimes someone will come and say, well, we have a homegrown application. It does some transformation of data, but we'd like to track it for lineage. Or sometimes they have a legacy application, you know, actual commercial one, but it was written in the 1990s. Recently, someone asked me about Power Builder. I hadn't heard that word in a very long time. But they still had some resources in that tool that they wanted to track lineage for. There's probably not a reason that ourselves or even a competitor of ours would commercially build something for either an in-house or a previous technology. So we provide something that we call Open Manta. Open Manta is a facility where you can craft your own lineage. In fact, I like to say in examples that, you know, if you wanted to actually trace the chair that you're sitting on and the table and desk that you're at, and have those show up on a graphical picture with a line between your chair and a table to show that relationship, you could. There's probably no business reason to do so, but Manta allows you through simple CSV files. You don't need Java skills or C++ API skills, but through straightforward CSV files, which makes it very accessible to governance teams. You can create the asset for the chair, the asset for the table, or the asset for a Power Builder program, or the asset for whatever in-house technology that you have, and tie the lines together, creating a lineage relationship, again, using CSV files that we then put into the Neo4j graph repository that we have, and then render that lineage graphically as you saw in that screenshot. Very easy.
Great, thank you, Ernie. That was a great example of the desk and the table, or the table and the chair. Ernie, our time has come. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you to our audience for being here. Our next session featuring Standard Chartered Bank will start shortly, so stay tuned for that. And Ernie, thank you again.
Thanks very much.